We will learn another beautiful piece of Zera Shimshon. This week's parsha, Parshas Yitro, the parsha of Matan Torah, begins the parsha with Vayishma Yitro. Yitro hears something that makes him change his entire life, makes him make an upheaval of his whole life, become a different person. And what did he hear? So Rashi says, Mashmu Hashama Uba. What did he hear that made him to come and change his whole mitzios, his whole essence? He heard Kriyas Yamsuf and Melchemes Amalek. There's a lot to talk about in this Rashi. Many speak about it in the Zera Shimshon, in Ois Aleph. Also, there's a tremendous pshetel about this, but that's a very long pshetel, which I don't have time to tell you now. But we will go about another Nekuda, which Zera Shimshon speaks about in this pasuk, which is a beautiful, beautiful Nekuda. And it says that Yisro, who was Kohen Midian, he was the Rabbi of Midian, like the Unkla says. He was the great man of Midian, and he was the son, he was father-in-law of Moshe, Chayson Moshe. What did he hear? Eris kol asher osa likim leMoshe Yisrael Amoy. All that Hashem had made to Moshe and Yisrael, his nation. Ki hoitzi Hashem es Yisrael in Mitzrayim, that he took Klal Yisrael out from Mitzrayim. So in this pasuk we have a very big question. Once it says that Hashem took Yisrael in Mitzrayim, so you already know that is what Asa Likim leMoshe Yisrael Amoy. So why does it have to say Es Asa Likim leMoshe Yisrael Amoy? And there's another question. The other question is that if it's already saying again this Asa Likim Yisrael Amoy, why does it mention Moshe singled out and put him first? Why is that? So Rashi tells us about the Moshe Yisrael Amoy, a very interesting point. B'shem the Mechilte, and he says, "The Moshe Yisrael Shokul Moshe Kineged Kol Yisrael." Here it's teaching us that Moshe Rabbeinu is equal to all Klal Yisrael. The Moshe Ul Yisrael, which is a very big yesod, and they say it many times that since Moshe is the manig and he's the big mashpia of Klal Yisrael, so he's Shokul Kineged Kol Yisrael, and that are very nice. But the question is only why. What does it have to do, Daska, with what it's talking about over here? That Yisro heard Kriyas Yamsuf, Melchemes Amalek, and here we are suddenly saying about Yitzias Mitzrayim. Oh, Shokul Moshe Keneged Kol Yisrael. Why? What is it so connected, Daska, to these two things? To Yitzias Mitzrayim, we could also shtickle understand the Yitzias Mitzrayim. Moshe Rabbeinu feared the whole Yitzias Mitzrayim. But what is the other Nekudas that we have over here? In them, Moshe Shokul Keneged Kol Yisrael. So Rabbi Isai says in Zera Shimshon a very beautiful pshat. He first begins in the middle of the Ois Aleph. He mentions that first Nekuda could be Negeya to Melchemes Amalek. And this will help us to understand that how do you know what Yisro heard? It says Vayishma Yisro. It doesn't say what. But from this Moshe Shokul Keneged Kol Yisrael, you could understand that there is something special over here. Besides Hoitzi Hashem es Yisrael in Mitzrayim, there's something else that in that you'll be able to see that Moshe Shokul Keneged Kol Yisrael, and that's what he heard. Now, we're going to start from Melchemes Amalek. Melchemes Amalek, what does it say in the pasuk in the previous parsha? It says these words in Perek Yud Zayin, pasuk Yud Aleph, the Moshe Rabbeinu goes up on the top of the Giva of the hill, and v'hoyo kashi yorim Moshe yodoi v'gova Yisrael. And it was when Moshe picked up his hand, that's when the Jewish people were victorious. They were misgaber over Amalek. And if it wasn't like that, then v'gover Amalek Rahman Litzlan. It was Amalek's turn to be on the top. Okay, Rabbi Yisai. So what is this telling us? It's telling us the etzem, the way most Sfarim explain, that Moshe Rabbeinu was mashpia to Klal Yisrael, the nitzachon of the Molchama of Amalek. And how was that? Through his koyach. Moshe was meirim yadai, he was meirim his koyach, and then v'gava Yisrael. And some explain that that's the inyan of Moshe Dafke, because the inyan that Amalek came through the matzav, the situation of Klal Yisrael being refidim, Rafu Yadeim in Atayra. They weren't Amal B'Atayra like they should be. They were weak in Amal Atayra. And Moshe Rabbeinu Ki Yadua, he's the power of Amelus B'Atayra. and he's mashpia the inyan of his chaskus, and Amal HaTorah, he strengthens Klal Yisrael, Amal HaTorah, and that's the power against Amalek. However it is, Moshe Rabbeinu was fearing, he was leading and being mashpia the koyach of the whole Mechemes Amalek, and the whole victory over Amalek. So that makes a lot of sense. Why you would say that it's Moshe v'Yisrael Amoy, that Moshe shokol keneged kol Yisrael in the inyan of Amalek, because it was him that it was mashpia the entire victory that Klal Yisrael had in Mechemes Amalek. Same idea, one could say, is about the Kriyas Yamsuf, which Kriyas Yamsuf, the actual Kriyas Yamsuf was done through the power of Moshe Rabbeinu. Like it says that he picked up his hand over the Yam, and Hashem says, you will split the Yam with that. So again, we have the koyach of Moshe Rabbeinu that really did the actual Kriyas Yamsuf. But Rabbi said that Zera Shimshon comes and adds a very beautiful point and explains why the inyan of Kriyas Yamsuf was dafke has to do especially with the inyan of Moshe Shokol Keneged Kol Yisrael. And he brings this with the words of the TZS Yomtiv. There's a very beautiful piece of TZS Yomtiv that gives us to understand the concept of what it is Kriyas Yamsuf. And the TZS Yomtiv is in Psochim Perek Yud Mishneh Vav. There we discuss what we do in Leil HaSeder. Leil HaSeder, we know that we say the Hallel. Now, it's a very interesting thing. We split the Hallel. The first part of Hallel we say is like part of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, which we then conclude with the bracha of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, Asher Ge'olanu. And we thank Hashem for having redeemed us from Mitzrayim, from taking us out from Avdus Lecheirus. And that is what you do in the first part. And then afterwards you eat, and then after Shulchan Aruch there's another thing called Hallel, and that is the Hallel that's talking about Lasid Lavai. That's not really part of the Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, and it's something else, and we split the two. And the question, of course, is how much do you say in the first part? So here we have Machlokes Beis Shammai Beis Hillel with a very beautiful explanation of TZS Yomtiv. So first it says like this: to where do you say it? Beis Shammai Oimer Ad Eim Abonim Shemecha. You only say the first kapitel of the Hallel, which is Alu Avdi Hashem, which, by the way, is Miriamis Yetzias Mitzrayim, though the Tiferes Yisrael seems to say that it doesn't say anything about Yetzias Mitzrayim. But if you know the Midrashim, it says that when Perel says to Klal Yisrael, that great fateful night, you are all now no more slaves to me. You are slaves to Hashem. And that's when Klal Yisrael immediately burst out with a song, and they said, Hallelu Avdei Hashem, which is the beginning of that kapitel, and Loi Avdei Paroi. We are now Avdei Hashem and not the servants of Paroi. Gevaldik. And in the Hemshech we see that it's talking about Mekimi Me'afar Dol, Me'ashpei Yarim Nevi, and it fits very well into the inyan of Yetzias Mitzrayim. But then comes Beis Hillel and says it's not enough. You can't just say until Ein Abonim Shemecha. You have to say Ad Chalonish L'maynin Moyu. Why? Because you have another thing which is only mentioned in the second kapitel, second Mizmor, and that is Kriyas Yamsuf. And Kriyas Yamsuf we say Hayam Rav Hayonos, Hayar Denis of Locher. Only when you mention the Kriyas Yamsuf, then V'chosim Begeula, that's this part of the Sipur, and that you finish off with saying the bracha of Geula, which is on Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim, like many Rishonim. So the question, of course, is why do you have to say that as a chelik of Sipur Yetzias Mitzrayim and as a chelik of Geula of Mitzrayim? And here we have the TZS Yomtiv. It says a very beautiful beer. Ubeis Hillel Savi, Kev under the Mizmor Rishon, Loi Nizkar Kriyas Yamsuf. Since in the first Mizmor, Kriyas Yamsuf is not mentioned, Dorish Yomer Gam Hasheni. She gets by Askoras Kriyas Yamsuf. Why? Kivit Shomer Achikach Birchat HaGeula. Afterwards, he's going to say the bracha of the Geula. Ki Loi Noishu Yisrael Miyad Mitzrayim. Because the real Yeshua, the final Yeshua of Klal Yisrael from the hand of Mitzrayim, the Avot Lecheirus, is only at Shedikra Namayam. the Yitro Mitzrayim, and the masters, the Mitzrayim, were drowned. And that you see in the first pasuk. The Shom Nemar, and only there does it say, Vayosha Hashem es Yisrael miyad Mitzrayim. The one who explains this more ba'arichos is the Rabbeinu Bechaya in Parshas Va'era on the pasuk of the 4 Lashonos of Geula. He says first we'll take you out from actually being slaves and being under them, and then it says V'go out and you will be redeemed from them. Says the Rabbeinu Bechaya that is a remiss to Kriyas Yamsuf. She'od nechshavu geulim. Only then were they considered redeemed. Why? A servant who goes out from under the hand of a very harsh master, that embittered his life with all types of shibudim, all types of enslavement, and he was forced to send him away from him and make him a ben chayrin against his will. What happens in such a case? The Eved is still very scared. Maybe his master is going to run after him. Until it becomes clarified by the master dying, he's no more here, then it's a final geula for this Eved. The Zehu, this is the reason, only after the Mitzrayim were destroyed and they're all drowned. Shenema, and the pasuk says, he brings the same pasuk. Shenema vayenar Hashem es Mitzrayim b'tach hayom. Hashem was famished all the Mitzrayim in the Yam, and he stirred them in the Yam. The Sonich, that's when it says right after that, Vayosha Hashem vayomahu es Yisrael ki oz nechshavu geulim v'noishayim, because then they were considered redeemed and saved. That's when the Tshuva was complete. And that's what he says, it fits into the Hemshech, that the Gaal Yasam B'Zdroya Nitzuya is a remnant to the Pasuk. Vayar Yisrael Sayad Agdoila, Ubishpotim Gedoilim, the great big judgments, or all the different punishments that they had become Adinim, like Chazal say about Kriyas Yamsuf, that each one got his own type of punishment. We're not going into all the Arichas, but that is what the Pasuk is saying. And so it's very interesting. It comes out that Kriyas Yamsuf isn't stam the Kriyas Yamsuf, but Kriyas Yamsuf was the siyomet, it was the culmination of the Yitzia Me'avdas L'Cheirus Adasoif. And the one who really says it's so beautiful, very short, is the Rashi in Megillah Yedal Amid Aleph. The Rashi says over there that we learn by Yitzias Mitzrayim that Me'avdas L'Cheirus, when we say Shira, we say Hallel, we praise Hashem, and where is that? B'Yitzias Mitzrayim was Avos L'Cheirus, She'amru Shira al Hayom, that they said Shira on the Yam. Now, it's true that they said Shira on the Yam, but what does that have to do with Avos L'Cheirus? Or with this Rabbeinu Yoina, with this Rabbeinu Bechaya, who says it's so beautiful, and this places Yom Tov who seconds what he says and explains with that the Das of Beis Hillel. It's beautiful. That is when the Geula of Mitzrayim really finished. And that's when they really were Yotzei, that's when they said the Shira. So the Shira wasn't only on the Yam Suf itself, per se, but it was the Shira of the Yam Suf, that through that, there was the culmination of the Yitzia from Mitzrayim. Now comes the Zera Shimshon and adds a very beautiful piece. He says like this. So what really brought the final Geula of Yisrael through Kriyas Yamsuf? Because there was a Kriyas Yamsuf and the Mitzrayim drowned in it. Why did HaKadosh Baruch Hu drown the Mitzrayim in the Yam? So we learn this in the beginning of our parsha, where Yisro says, "Ki v'adavar asher zadu aleim," because they planned to throw the Jewish children into the water. Kodesh Baruch Hu punished them midah keneged midah, measure for measure, and he put them and threw them into the Yam in a way. So this is really what made Kriyas Yamsuf. And that's what it says in the Rambam, the Furish, in Perek Ches, Mehilchas Yisrael HaTorah Halacha Aleph, that the reason to make Kriyas Yamsuf really was to punish the Mitzrayim for having to make the Zera of Kol Ben Ayiloi Hayoretz Hashlichu. Now, Rabbi Isai, let's think for a second. Why did they make the Zera of Kol Ben Ayiloi Hayoretz Hashlichu? So the Gemara in Seitzet Daf Gimel Amud Beis said that was because the stargazers of Paroi saw there's going to be a great savior for Klal Yisrael is going to get born, Moshiach Shel Yisrael, but he's going to be hit with water. And they didn't know that we're talking about Moshe being hit with the main Riva at the end, and they thought it was something to do now. And they were the ones who are going to bring the water, and therefore they don't know who he is, but let's what really happened was that Moshe was the first one to be in there. The moment he was put into the water, the stargazers saw, oh, it's finished, there's no Mashiach. And then the Mevatel Zera and all Klal Yisrael was saved through that. They were not thrown in. But HaKadosh Baruch Hu considered the Mitzrayim as if they really threw the kids into the Mayim, and therefore he had to make a Kriyas Yamsuf, and that's what happened. But who was the cause of the whole Kriyas Yamsuf? Not only the one who made the Lemaisa Kriyas Yamsuf, Moshe, but who was the cause of this whole thing? Moshe Rabbeinu, Mashiach Shel Yisrael. So that's like the Zera Shimshon. It's beautiful. That's what the pasuk is saying. We're talking about Kriyas Yamsuf. Es kol hashos Elokim leMoshe Yisrael Amoy. Elokim is din, and what's the din? The din is that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was doing dinim in Mitzrayim, shpatim gedolim, ha'oinish for kivadova shezadu aleihem. What was that? Kriyas Yamsuf. In that, Moshe was shoku keneged Kol Yisrael, because he was the one who was geirim the whole Kriyas Yamsuf, which therefore brought about the geula for Klal Yisrael totally from Nehavas Lecherus. So it's Gevaldik. So Moshe Rabbeinu, he is the reason for the Gezerah. The Gezerah is the reason for the Kriyas Yamsuf. The Kriyas Yamsuf finishes the geula from Mitzrayim, and it's so beautiful. That's what the pasuk is saying. As Kosh also Lekim, Moshe Yisrael Amoin, Moshe be Shofel Knei Kol Yisrael, and then Ki Hoitzi Hashem es Bnei Yisrael Mitzrayim. It's Yisrael Mitzrayim that through this Kriyas Yamsuf, HaKadosh Baruch Hu had been Moitzi Yisrael from Mitzrayim ad Asayif. So the pasuk is beautiful, and the Moshe Shofel Knei Kol Yisrael is connected, and even Maram is to these two other things that are not mentioned in the pasuk, Kriyas Yamsuf and Melchemes Amalek, Gevaldik, Rabbi Isai. But we started the parsha with Yisro listening, hearing, because Yisro was the only one who heard to the depth of what Hashem was really telling the world, and he ran to the truth because he was always searching for the truth. And by Yishma Yisro Shama Uba, what happened? He was zeicher to become a Yid, and he was zeicher to become Nitzchi. He did things for the everlasting life. He zeicher to Nitzchi, to everlasting life. And this is the ois that it was added to his name that he got from Yeter. Rashi says he got the name Yisroi. They added an ois vav. And the oimik, why they added an ois vav, is brought from the Sifrei HaKabbalah, because ois vav is an ois of emes. And it's an ois of kiyum, because emes has existence and netzach. And this is really why Yisro was zeicher to the ois vav, because he ran after the emes, and if you run after the emes, you're zeicher to kiyum. Kodesh Baruch Hu should help. We should all be mischadik, as we're coming now, and we have the great Yom Tov of Tu B'Shvat, where we are all mischadish, we become renewed, and it's not just the Paris of the field, but it's the Adam Eitz Hasadeh, which is his Paris become renewed, which is the Chidush Torah and his Amal Torah, like the Chidush Harim says. Baruch Hashem, we saw some beautiful Chidushim just now from the Zera Shimshon. We should be Mischazik in Amal Torah. We should be Dovuk to Emes, and the more we Dovuk to Emes, we'll be Dovuk to life, be Dovuk to Chaim, and through that be Zoiche, that Kimei Tzeischa Meretz Mitzrayim, Erenu Niflois, that the same as we talk about the culmination of the Gula of Mitzrayim, but it was never really finished until we can come to our final Gula, which we're all awaiting, and that is the same as the Mitzrayim was the Shorish of all Golis, is the Geula of Mitzrayim is the Shorish of all Geulis. Let us be Zoiche, B'Korev Mamish, to the Ischatshus of Klal Yisrael and the entire world, with the Bias Goel Tzedek, and the Yom Shekulei Shabbos u'Menucha, V'chei Olamim, B'mheira B'yameinu, Amen, Kein Yehi Ratzain. Good Shabbos to everyone.